My stepdad is strangely obsessed with bottlenose dolphins, and I just found out the deeply unsettling reason why. Kevin became my stepfather when he married my mom in 2024. She met him in 2022, 2 years after my dad passed. To be honest, Kevin seemed like a blessing. You know how stepdads are usually portrayed, rude, overbearing, maybe even a little evil. I was almost hoping for that cliché so I'd have an excuse not to like him. But, frustratingly, I couldn't find much to hate. And this was coming from a sulky 15-year-old still tangled in grief, so I had every reason to push him away. I should have hated my stepdad, but I didn't. Kevin was nice. Kevin was perfect. At least, he seemed that way, until the illusion cracked earlier this spring. That's when I learned about his special interest. Bottlenose dolphins. At first, I was relieved to finally find something odd about him. After 3 years of being the perfect guy, it was almost a relief to know he had a quirky side. Some weirdness. A flaw. It made him seem more real, more human. I was wrong. Right before I left for university last September, Kevin invited me on a fishing trip, even though I reminded him I wasn't really into it. My sister Becky was actually more interested, but Kevin called it male bonding. Becky didn't love that phrasing. I, on the other hand, was secretly glad to add a bit old-fashioned to the list of his shortcomings. Why was I so eager to spot something off about Kevin? Maybe, deep down, I always felt something wasn't quite right. And maybe I just wanted a simple explanation for that churning in my gut. Something that wouldn't scare me. Peaceful out here, isn't it, Craig? Kevin said as we dangled our rods into the water. I shrugged. Sure. Don't worry, he chuckled. Soon you'll be off to uni clubs, parties, mistakes, you'll be far away from your boring old stepdad. Is it okay if I call myself that? I stifled a sigh. You always ask that. The answer's still yes. I know, but you still won't use the word, Kevin said with a small frown. That makes me a little sad. I tried to pivot the conversation. So, why do you like fishing so much? His face lit up. Nature, Craig. It's incredible. Sometimes harsh, but still beautiful. Perfectly balanced. Perfectly made. You want to know my favorite animal? Weird question. His tone was so childlike, I almost laughed. But I nodded. The bottlenose dolphin, Kevin whispered, eyes fixed on the water. That's why I talked your mom into this little trip to Wales before you go to uni. I want to see them again, swimming out there. I used to come every year. It's been too long. I miss it. But this is good. Talking to you about it. I've been talking your mom's ear off for 3 years. It's nice to share it with someone new. Oh yeah, he continued, the bottlenose is my favorite animal. Maybe even my favorite thing in the world. I had to fight back a grin at his enthusiastic ramble. With how much you love dolphins, I'm surprised you haven't mentioned it before. Kevin sighed, a deep, heavy breath. Not everyone gets it, Craig. I've opened up about this side of me before, and let's just say, it didn't go well. I snorted, tried to cover it as a cough. But Kevin didn't laugh. He went quiet. Not a calm quiet. A tense one. I could feel something simmering under the surface, like his friendly mask had slipped just for a second. Anyway, about a week later, the 4 of us arrived at our Airbnb in Cardigan Bay, North Wales. While Mum and Kevin were booking a boating excursion along the coast, I decided to share what I'd learned with Becky. Get ready, I said. On our fishing trip, I found out that Kevin's really into dolphins. So am I, she replied casually. No, I mean he's really into them, I repeated with a grin. Becky raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? I smirked and tilted my head toward Kevin, who was bouncing from foot to foot while he and Mum huddled around the iPad. Becky smiled. Well, that's kind of sweet, isn't it? I shook my head, a lump forming in my throat. Something about the way he acted still didn't sit right with me. At first, yeah, I thought so too. But then it got kind of strange. I laughed, and he didn't take it well. "That's what he gets for choosing you over me," Becky joked. "So much for male bonding, huh?" I would have been nicer about it. I wouldn't have laughed at his dolphin enthusiasm. I burst out laughing. "Please don't ever say that again. What are you two giggling about?" Mom asked as she and Kevin returned to the kitchen. Becky mouthed something at me, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling too hard. "Nothing," I managed to say. "Just excited about the boat trip." Mom narrowed her eyes. "My two kids, willingly spending time with us. That's suspicious." "Kids? Becky's almost 20, I said. She's ancient now." "You're both babies to us," Mom sighed, grabbing her coat. "Come on, let's go for a little stroll before the sun runs off. We've got about an hour before our booking." Kevin seemed a bit distracted as we wandered the town. His attention drifted again and again toward the sea. Becky noticed too. We exchanged a few knowing glances, realizing he was already thinking about the dolphins. He eventually led us to the dock nearly 10 minutes early. "We've got the whole boat to ourselves," Kevin whispered, practically glowing. "Well, not entirely," came a voice from behind. We turned to see a stout man with a gray, bushy beard making his way down the wooden pier. "Dave!" Kevin called out, beaming, and pulled the man into a hug. "That's Captain Dave to you," the man joked, and they both laughed. Becky looked puzzled. "You two know each other?" "They're old friends," Mum said. "That's how we got the boat all to ourselves. Even scored a nice discount," Dave chuckled. "Some would say a 30-year friendship deserves more than 30% off," Kevin teased. Dave rolled his eyes. "Stop trying to bleed me dry. Come on then, everyone. Let's get on board." It was a stunning day. That's one of the things I remember most. The sun blazed overhead, baking us all. I sat by the taffrail, letting the breeze cool me down. And that's when I saw it, a sleek, shimmering fin rising and dipping rhythmically with the waves. I opened my mouth to speak, but... "Oh, it's beautiful!" Kevin suddenly shouted. "Kathy, are you seeing this?" "I see it," Mum said with a laugh, standing beside him. The two of them stood close together, watching the creature swim alongside the boat. I turned to find Becky, but she wasn't on deck. "You should go and get Becky," Kevin said quickly. I nodded. But when I stepped inside the cabin, I found only Captain Dave standing behind the wheel. He nodded at me, wearing the faintest smile. And just like before, that same weird feeling crept over me. Something felt off. Like it had during the fishing trip. "Where is she?" I asked. "Said she wanted a nap," Dave replied, nodding again, this time toward the door to his right, which led to the lower quarters. Didn't seem all that interested in the dolphins. I frowned and pushed past him, opening the door. A short staircase led to a cramped little room with a small table, a few empty takeaway boxes, and a single bed in the back. Becky was lying there, her breathing slow and steady, gentle, like the movement of a dolphin's fin. I took a shaky breath and tried to calm myself. "Bottlenose dolphins are special animals, Craig." The voice came from behind. I turned to see Kevin, now inside with us, quietly closing the door. "It's a little strange for my sister to be napping in the captain's bed, don't you think?" I asked. Kevin didn't respond to that. "You're missing the dolphins, boy." Boy. He'd never called me that before. And his tone, sharp, deliberate, cut through the air. "I don't care how well you know Dave," I said, slowly turning toward Becky. "She shouldn't be sleeping down here." I knelt beside the bed. "Becky? Wake up. She'll be resting for a while," Kevin said softly. Then I heard it, the click of the door locking. And something inside me dropped. A rush of dread took hold of me like a fist closing around my lungs. I could barely breathe. I could barely move. But I twisted my trembling body around and placed myself between Kevin and Becky, back to the bed, hands on the floor to steady myself. "Mom," I whispered, barely able to get the word out. "She's asleep too," Kevin said gently. "But you're awake. And you've always been curious. You want to know more about my favorite animal, don't you?" I tried to shake my head, but I was frozen. All that talk of turning 18, finally becoming an adult, it vanished. In that moment, I was just a scared kid again. Scared and alone. "As I told you on the lake," Kevin said, stepping forward, "nature is an incredible thing. It's about balance. And whether we like it or not, we're part of that. You and me. Humans. We've got a lot to learn from the world around us. From animals like the bottlenose dolphin." His voice was calm, almost too calm. "And it's not just their intelligence. Or their communities. Or how surprisingly assertive they can be. It's something deeper. You see, they understand that nature doesn't always follow human ideas of right and wrong. Nature does what it needs to survive." He paused. "Do you know what male dolphins do when they want to ensure their future in the pod, Craig?" I didn't answer. The words he used chilled me, each one confirming a growing fear I hadn't wanted to name. Kevin took another step forward. I curled in tighter. "I'll explain," he continued, his voice quiet and intense. "Male dolphins sometimes prevent rivals from passing on their legacy. They do this to make sure the next generation carries their line forward. It's harsh. It's instinctual. But it's what they do. And once that process begins, the female is drawn back into the cycle, ready to start again. It's brutal, but in their world, it works." He knelt slightly, as if talking to a child. "Now, I'm not saying humans are the same," Kevin added. "Of course not. But you can't deny there's something primal in all of us. Some ancient understanding of what nature really is. It's not about comfort. It's about continuation. And I've learned over the years that sometimes, when a family is broken apart, something stirs in the people left behind. A kind of need. A drive to rebuild." He studied me closely. "To be the one who helps rebuild it. To be the new protector. The new guide. The new beginning. Of course, there will be sorrow," Kevin continued, "but from that sorrow comes something new. A new longing. A new direction. And I'll be there to guide it. To build a new life with your mother. I've waited 5 long years. But now, it's time." I managed to force out a few shaky words. "Please, I don't understand." Kevin looked at me with an expression that was almost blank, his lips tight, his eyes cold. "That's exactly what your father said." My heart felt like it stopped. "What did you say?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He knelt in front of me. Only a few feet between us now. "I saw you. Your sister. Your mum," he said quietly. "Visiting him in the hospital. The 4 of you were perfect. I saw it and thought, why shouldn't I have that? So I made sure I could. Your father might have recovered, eventually. But I couldn't let that happen." My breath caught in my throat. My heart pounded wildly now, every beat filled with dread. Kevin wasn't just being cruel, he was confessing. My dad hadn't passed away due to some medical failure. This man had taken everything. And he'd succeeded. But my limbs were starting to respond again. I could feel my hands again. I slid one along the floor until I found it, a steel-toed boot lying nearby. "For what it's worth," Kevin said, voice almost gentle, "I've always liked you, Craig. But nature has rules. Harsh ones. And I can't truly be what your mother needs until I erase the past. As long as you and Becky are still here, the past is, too." I could see it in his eyes. He was about to move. So I did it first. I swung. The boot connected with the side of Kevin's head, sending him sprawling to the floor. He groaned, clutching his head in pain. It wasn't enough to stop him entirely, but it gave me a chance. I jumped up and kicked again, this time striking him with enough force that his head slammed into the side of the table. He went limp. Not waiting to see if he'd get back up, I bolted up the stairs, unlocked the cabin door, and burst into the upper deck. "So, have you?" Captain Dave began, but stopped cold when he saw me instead of Kevin. And there, slumped in one of the seats by the rail, was my mom. She wasn't moving, but she was breathing. She looked drugged. I remembered the bottled water they offered when we got on board. I hadn't taken one. If I had, I might have been out cold like the others. Captain Dave stared at me, for a heartbeat, maybe more. Then he charged. I ducked and slipped under his arm, sprinting toward the back of the boat. The wind whipped at me as I reached the railing. Behind us, 3 dolphins leapt playfully in and out of the waves. But when I turned back, Dave was coming fast. He was big. Strong. If he had slowed down, paced himself, he could have easily overpowered me. But he didn't. I screamed and dove out of the way. Dave's arm clipped me as he flew past, and it was enough. His own momentum carried him over the edge. He fell overboard with a splash. The boat, still idling slowly forward, started to drift off course. The wheel was unmanned now. Captain Dave was flailing in the water behind us as we pulled away, inch by inch. Meanwhile, still trailing behind the boat, was the overboard captain. He splashed and flailed in the water, cutting across the dolphins' path. They slowed down, poking their heads out of the surface, releasing sharp, distressed cries. Then I heard a metallic clunk, and the boat engine cut off. I turned to see Kevin stepping out of the cabin, out of breath, the boat keys dangling in his hand. "Help me!" Captain Dave shouted from about 20 yards behind us. "Get me away from these animals." Kevin's eyes locked on mine, filled with rage. He pointed at me with the keys. "You." This time, I had no advantage. No surprise. No weapon. I thought about jumping into the sea and swimming for shore. But the thought of what Kevin might do to my sister or mom if I left, that kept me rooted in place. I raised my arms to shield myself, but Kevin was too strong. He pulled them away with ease. Then, with terrifying speed, he grabbed me by the neck and shoved me backward, my upper body hanging over the edge of the boat, my head tilted down toward the open sea. I could barely breathe. The world flipped upside down. From my view, Captain Dave seemed to be swimming down from the sky. He was getting closer, but I knew I couldn't handle both of them. Not like this. Then I saw them. The dolphins. They were still there, still swimming, still making strange, sharp vocalizations. And they were all heading toward the captain. One of them surged out of the water, its snout aimed directly at Dave. Then came a scream of pain. The dolphin had latched onto his arm. As Dave thrashed in the water, panicked and struggling, 2 more dolphins rushed in, circling him, responding to the chaos. That was my chance. Kevin's grip loosened. I gasped, sucked in air, and pulled myself back upright. I turned, Kevin was already inside the cabin, frantically rummaging through a locker. When he emerged, he held something in his hands. A spear gun. "Don't move," he barked, lifting the weapon. "One wrong move and I ruin everything. Got it?" Without waiting for a reply, Kevin aimed and fired into the water. I flinched at the sharp snap of the trigger. Then came a high-pitched cry from the ocean. I looked over the railing, and saw the spear embedded in one of the dolphins. Its smooth, gray body twisted in pain. The other 2 dolphins let out shrill, rattling sounds that echoed off the waves, sounds I didn't know animals could make. They weren't just upset anymore. They were furious. Captain Dave, bleeding and exhausted, tried to paddle one-handed toward the boat. That's when one of the dolphins stopped circling and made a low, chilling sound, something I'll never forget. It wasn't just a noise. It was a warning. The air shifted. The sea went quiet. This was no longer about disruption. This was retaliation. One of the dolphins suddenly slipped beneath the surface, and I knew what was coming, long before the captain did. His eyes widened. Then something pulled at his feet. He let out a cry as he was yanked down, disappearing under the water. "David!" Kevin shouted, scrambling to reload the spear gun, aiming now at the third and final dolphin. That dolphin floated quietly beside the one that had been injured. Its movements were slow, deliberate. I swear to you, I felt what it felt. It was grieving. But more than that, it understood. It looked at Kevin, and it knew. It knew who had caused all of this. Call it instinct, or fear, or something primal, whatever it was, I backed away from the edge of the deck, crawling on my hands behind the taffrail. Kevin glared at me, gripping the weapon. "Don't try to run," he snapped. "When I'm done with that thing, you're next." He turned his back to the sea. That was his mistake. A sudden crash of water, so loud it made me flinch, erupted behind him. A gray shape burst from the ocean, half silhouetted by the blazing sun. In one perfect movement, the dolphin launched itself just high enough. It clamped onto Kevin's side with incredible force. He screamed and dropped the weapon as he was pulled backward, over the edge, and into the sea. He vanished beneath the waves, along with the captain. I sat there, frozen. I couldn't even cry. My whole body trembled, unsure whether I was more terrified of what had just happened, or what Kevin had become. Maybe both. For a long time, I didn't move. I was terrified the dolphins might come back. That they might think I was part of this. That I was like him. But they didn't return. Eventually, as the sun began to dip below the horizon and the boat gently drifted with the tide, I heard the creak of the cabin door behind me. Becky stumbled out, still groggy. She rubbed her eyes. "Where are the captain and Kevin?" I couldn't answer. I just started crying. Hard. She took out her phone and called the police. Mom woke up not long after. She was shaken, confused, but okay. The Coast Guard arrived within 30 minutes and got us back to shore. Even now, after I explained everything I could to Mom and Becky, it still doesn't feel real. Even after the authorities found the bodies washed up on a beach nearby, even after the case was closed. It doesn't feel real. I didn't tell them what Kevin told me about Dad. That secret is mine to carry. They don't need to know more than they already do. Kevin once told me that nature is a beautiful thing. And he was right. Beautiful, and terrible.